The ancient Essenes perhaps identified best the role of our personal relationships and categorized them. They went so far as to actually categorize 7 mysteries of relationship that we would live, each individual through the course of their lives would live simply by living life in the presence of one another. They have categorized these as mirrors, and what they remind us of is that in each moment of our life, the reality that we have become within is mirrored to us. It is a reflected reality. It is mirrored to us by the actions and the choices and the language of those around us. The first mirror of those relationships is a mirror of our presence in the moment. It's the mystery of the first mirror, what it is that we reflect to those around us in the moment. When we find ourselves surrounded by individuals and patterns of relationship and behavior with a dominant aspect of anger or rage or fear perhaps, and the mirror works both ways. It could just as easily be joy and ecstasy and happiness in our lives. If the first mirror is at play, what we're seeing is a mirror of that which we are in the moment, that's which we are radiating to those individuals around us as they mirror or shine back to us that which has been offered, the mirror of that which we are in the moment. The second mirror of relationship is of a similar quality, although it's a little more subtle. Rather than mirroring to us what we are in the moment, the second mirror mirrors to us that which we judge in the moment. If you should find yourself surrounded by individuals who demonstrate patterns of behavior that perhaps frustrate you, push your buttons of anger or rage, and you sense that those are not your patterns, they're not you in the moment, you ask yourself, are they showing me in this moment? And you say honestly to yourself, no, then there's a good possibility they may be showing you that which you judge in the moment, the anger and the rage or the joy that you are judging in that moment. When you find many different people demonstrating the same patterns to you, many different people demonstrating their anger, their rage to you. Have you ever been angry and been in a big hurry to get somewhere and gotten into your car to drive to wherever it was you were going and found that everywhere you went, you made the wrong choices? You made the wrong choice in the teller line at the bank. You chose the slow line. You made the wrong choice on the exit ramp on the freeway. And everywhere when you're driving down the road, you're seeing people that are pulling out in front of you and then doing about 30 miles an hour in a 55. They may be mirroring to you what you are in that moment. We're going to talk about a reflected reality in just a few moments, a reflected reality. Often, the mystery of the first mirror is precisely what's happening. Often we will find people in our presence who are mirroring to us that which we are in the moment, and often that's not the case. And then people say, well, the mirrors don't work. Well, they do work if we have the wisdom to recognize what it is they're saying. A few years ago, I had the opportunity, a rare opportunity, have 3 people come into my life in the same month. Now, that should have been my clue right there. When 3 brand new relationships, very different in nature, all occur within the same month, that's the flag that says something's going to happen here. You better believe it. One of them was potentially a romantic relationship. One of them was potentially a business relationship. One was a mix between a business, a relationship, and a friendship. Each of them came into my life. Each of them came to me. And that's to have been the second clue. Each of them found me. The romantic relationship, it was with someone who I had worked with. We had spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of common interests, and it was one of those things where it just kind of made sense to be together. It wasn't like there wasn't a powerful magnetic attraction. It was more, it just seemed like the thing to do. The business relationship was especially interesting for me. I was very busy doing seminars, more than full-time. It's like we are now. And there was a gentleman that came to me and offered to do the logistics and to set these seminars up, allowing me, freeing me up to do the things that I was choosing to do more of, and allowing him to do the things that he did best. Sounded like a good plan for me to do that. And the friendship and kind of quasi-business relationship. There was a gentleman, a very talented, very skilled carpenter, who asked if he could house sit on my property in northern New Mexico while I was leading a group to Egypt in the late fall. And I had been looking for someone to stay on the property, and it looked like also a good thing to do. He said that he would like to stay at that property in exchange for his carpentry and caretake. And so all of these happened right about the same time. It was a very, very busy time in my life. And I said, okay, sure. Well, within that month, within the same month that each of those three people came into my life, each of them just about began to make me crazy. They were just driving me right up the wall. And there's a pattern that I had demonstrated throughout much of my life. When things were making me crazy, we call it crazy making, when things were doing that for me, I would use logic. And through my logic, I'd say, oh, Greg, you're just tired. You know, you've been on the road a lot. You know, you're under a lot of pressure right now. Let's see how it is in another week or so, or see how it is in a couple of weeks. And I would go away. I did this with these people, and I'd go away on the trip, and then I'd come back in a week or 10 days, and everything was the same, and I did this again and again. Well, there's a routine that I would do at that time in my life. When I would travel on a trip like this, I would come back through the Albuquerque airport. I'd stop at the ATM, pull out some cash, pull my animals out of the vet, get the car out of parking, fill up the car, and drive approximately 4 hours to our home in northern New Mexico. And on this one particular trip, I came home and I began that routine, and I didn't get very far with it. Because I went to the ATM at 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in the Albuquerque airport, and the ATM machine told me there was nothing in that account. And I knew that it was a mistake. I knew that the account was full because I'd just been approved for a construction loan. It was a business construction loan on my property in northern New Mexico, and that there was plenty of money there, and I would check it Monday morning. So I drove home, and Monday morning, sure enough, I got up and I called the bank, and they said, well, there's no mistake, Mr. Braden. Not only is there no money in this account, you are overdrawn by 71 checks, and there's a $30 service charge in each of those checks. When can you come in and talk to us? I said, well, I'll be right there.
One of those checks was to me.
And one of those checks was to my dear friend, Jeff Volk, and that's how we met. So now Jeff gets the story. Because Jeff had trusted me and sent me a video. I'm sorry, Jeff. So I did. I went to the bank and I said, well, what's happening? They said, well, there was a wire withdrawal from your account. It was not authorized. It was not authorized by me, and they believed that it was. And every penny in that account had been taken, and all the checks had already been written outstanding were now coming back against that account. And when something like that happens, there's really no way to rationalize anything else. You can't do anything else. So I didn't even have enough money to put gas in my car and get my animals out of the vet. There was absolutely nothing that was there, and I had to go home and look at this. I said, wow, something big is happening here. Well, at the same time, I had just completed a tour, a series of workshops along the Pacific Northwest for about 30 days. And the people who had offered to set these programs up for me had many reasons why the money from those programs wouldn't come through. They said, well, our accounting isn't done, or we haven't reconciled our accounts, or whatever. Something was happening. And at the same time, the gentleman who was living on my property in exchange for the carpentry, and this is really very delicate for me, and I have to be really careful. I guess the best way to identify this is that he had chosen a lifestyle that not only was what our property was not about, it was illegal in the eyes of the state of New Mexico at that time,
And I was asking him to change his lifestyle. Was that delicate? That was good. So all these things were happening at the same time. And I said, if the mirrors hold true, obviously there are some mirrors that are happening to me. What are these mirrors saying to me? Well, I went for a walk. I couldn't do much else. I had to go for a walk that day. There's a beautiful road that goes about 4 miles from our home down to the Rio Grande Gorge, a beautiful wildlife sanctuary. I went for a walk down the road that day. There's a huge mountain. It's called Ute Peak. There are a lot of stories from the Ute Indians about what this mountain, it's a very sacred mountain. It marks the end of their hunting grounds. And I often walk along this road in front of this mountain. I've written whole books, done entire workshops on this road, and I have to go home and put them in the computer. And I asked myself this question. I said, if these mirrors hold true, then there's a mirror that's happening here. What are these people showing to me? And I knew that I had to find a common thread. So I began looking at what each of these relationships was demonstrating. And I went through all kinds of possibilities. And when it was all said and done, what I knew that in each relationship, I knew that there were issues of honesty, integrity, and trust were the three that were really the most outstanding for me. And so I said to myself, if this mirror holds true, if people that are around me are demonstrating these patterns of behavior, are they showing me that I somehow am lacking in honesty, as Jeff may have thought, or integrity, or trust? Is that what they're showing me? And this feeling welled up inside of me before I even got that sentence out of my head and said, no, that's what this work is all about. That's precisely what this work is all about. And at the same time, there was a realization. It was such a powerful, it was subtle and powerful, that came to me, and I realized that they were not showing me a mirror of what I was in the moment, as we've always been conditioned, as I'd been conditioned to believe. Rather, they were showing me a more subtle mirror, the mirror of what I judged in that moment. The mirror of what I judged in that moment. And that's precisely what was happening. I had a tremendous charge on honesty and integrity and trust. Such a charge that I was not willing to allow it in others. I was not willing to allow that in others. When you have a charge on something, what does that promise? It promises that you'll see it. You'll see it in your life if you've got a charge on it. I had that charge. These three people that came into my life, now I know that each of them was a powerful, skillful master that impeccably held the mirror to me during that time in my life of my greatest charges. And it was relatively concise the way they did that. It could have drawn out over years, and maybe it did. Maybe those mirrors have been shown to me year after year on such subtle levels that I never recognized them. And they became less subtle and less subtle and less subtle until something happened that I could not look away from. And in that moment, I had that mirror. In that moment, I was shown the second Essene mystery of relationship, the mirror of that which we judge in the moment. The gentleman that had invited me to work with him wanted to set up these seminars. The very first moment we met, something interesting happened. We met in the home of a mutual friend in Northern California. And the first moment we met, I'd never seen him before. I'd spoken with him on the phone. And our eyes met on the landing of this house. And I said something to him that I seldom, or rarely, will ask anyone upon first meeting him. And I simply said, "When's your birthday?" And he said, "Well, my birthday is June 28th, 1954. And I said, "Wow, that's my birthday. The exact month, the exact day, and the exact year." I'm a Cancerian. If you know much about Cancerians, you know that Cancerians live in a world of feeling. Maybe that's why we're exploring feelings this weekend. And I'm a double Cancerian, which means double feeling. And depending on how you run the charts, I've got 5 or 6 planets in the 12th house that are all in Cancer. So my world is a very feeling world. And my path has been to reconcile that feeling world with the academic.
The ancient Essenes perhaps identified best the role of our personal relationships and categorize them. They went so far as to actually categorize 7 mysteries of relationship that we would live, each individual through the course of their lives would live simply by living life in the presence of one another. They have categorized these as mystery and happiness in our lives. If the first mirror is at play, what we're seeing is a mirror of that which we are in the moment, that's which we are radiating to those individuals around us as they mirror or shine back to us that which has been offered, the mirror of that which we are in the moment. The second mirror of relationship is of a similar quality, although it's a little more subtle. The first mirror of those relationships is a mirror of our presence in the moment. It's the mystery of the first mirror, what it is that we reflect to those around us in the moment. When we find ourselves surrounded by individuals and patterns of relationship and behavior with a dominant aspect of anger or rage or fear perhaps, and the mirror works both ways. It could just as easily be joy and ecstasy. Mirrors. And what they remind us of is that in each moment of our life, the reality that we have become within is mirrored to us. It is a reflected reality. It is mirrored to us by the actions and the choices and the language of those around us. Rather than mirroring to us what we are in the moment, the second mirror mirrors to us that which we judge in the moment. If you should find yourself surrounded by individuals who demonstrate patterns of behavior that perhaps frustrate you, push your buttons of anger or rage, and you sense that those are not your patterns, they're not you in the moment, you ask yourself, are they showing me in this moment? And you say, honestly,